Power Project family, how's it going? Now, we talk about sleep all the time on the podcast because it's one of the biggest things that helps you with your health and fitness, your recovery, your muscle gain, your fat loss, everything. That's why I've partnered with 8 Sleep for such a long time now, because the technology behind the mattress allows you to track your heart rate, the amount of times it takes you to fall asleep, your tosses and turns, your heart rate variability. It changes its temperature through the night based off how you sleep, but not only yourself, but maybe your partner on the other side of the bed. It is an amazing mattress. Andrew, how can they learn more?
Yes, head over to 8sleep.com/powerproject. That's 8 spelled out, EIGHT, sleep.com/powerproject. Along with more information, you guys will actually save $150 off of your entire order automatically. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
He's got to hit the button over there.
The button has been pushed.
Is it working today?
I think so.
Better make sure it works, Doc.
Dude, trust me.
He's a piece of crap.
I don't think I've ever been this nervous to make sure everything works for sure. Like, it's running. You're
going to keep
saying time clock's going.
Seeing that it says record.
It says record. The red lights are on. Everyone's mic's on. We're good to go.
What I like about this is that it's the day after Christmas.
Yes.
And when I was driving here today, I noticed there wasn't a lot of people on the road.
That's nice, yeah.
People aren't doing shit today, but we're in here working, right?
Yeah. God bless you for doing this, Mark.
Yeah, I appreciate you spending your time with us. I know you got places to be, but I really thought it was important to have you on the show, and I think there's just so many things to dive into. I'm a big fan of trying to follow your interest, and after being somebody that has dabbled in a bunch of different like hobbies/sports over the years, I got myself kind of caught in some interesting spots where I felt like sometimes I was forcing myself. And over time, I learned for myself that things felt better for me if I was a little kinder to myself, if I was a little nicer to myself, if I didn't get on the side of, sometimes you'll hear people say like, oh, you must really hate yourself to do that. And for me personally, I've learned that over time, it's just been, well, if I did it, I think it just means that I'm interested in it. So when you talk about resistance and stuff, I find it really interesting because I've noticed that when that little thing of resistance, the second that it pops up for me, I just go and do, because I'm like, I can't have this conversation with myself. I know that this war, this battle, it's probably not going to go well for me. So I want out of here. And so I'm just going to go do the damn thing that I'm trying to teach myself to do, that I'm interested in.
You know, I'm really curious in what your whole theory, Mark, about what you mean by interest. You know, would you equate that to your passion? Or like I'm thinking about if you have a kid, you have a son, let's say, that's into athletics, and you sort of are sussing them out. Do they want to be in baseball? Do they want to be in soccer? What you're looking for, that interest, right? And then is that what you mean? The one sort of thing that lights them up? Is that
100%. Yeah. What's the thing that gets you excited? What's the thing that you, at least on day one, you want to get out of bed for, or you feel like it's in your best interest? Maybe it is. Maybe you feel like it's in your best interest to be on a better diet, to lose some weight. And so you might say, I don't really want to eat this next meal. This is frustrating. But I think you have to remember how high is your interest level in this thing? And if you continue to fail, I think rather than beat yourself up over it, I think that you might want to just keep in mind that maybe you're just not that interested in it as you think you are at the moment.
So would you say, I'm going to be interviewing you here, that the higher your interest is in something, interest, your word, the higher the resistance is to it, or is it less?
I would say there's a lot less friction. There might be some friction in the beginning, but there's a lot less friction. I think how people go about getting past some of those first couple days or weeks where there is friction, I think is highly individual. And that's maybe where we get people saying, like, I hate myself so much, I'm going to go run at 5 a.m. or something like that. But I like your point of bringing up the kid, bringing up, somebody having a child and trying to expose them to a bunch of different things and to find their interest. And I think that's what we should do for ourselves.
Yeah.
Just keep poking around. What is it that you like? What is it that you're,
yeah.
What does somebody recognize that you're maybe a little bit better at than most? Like, wow, I really like what you've written there. That was really cool. I love that painting that you drew. Wow, holy shit, I never saw someone throw a baseball like that before.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely a believer. I know you know this, that we're not born as blank slates, right? That we come into this life with a history of some kind. I mean, I'm a believer in previous lives and that sort of stuff too. But I believe that you talk about interests. I think we're born with certain, proclivities or some areas that light us up and other areas don't. And in many ways, I think our job in this life is to find those interests, and focus on them and not try to imagine that we can be anything we want to be. That's, if I understand, Mark, what your definition of interest is, that's
100%.
That's how I would translate it.
And I really like that you said it's your job, your job to find.
I think it is your
what
job.
is this thing? I'm a believer also that will is a divinity within everybody. The power of will and the sharpening of your sword and making yourself stronger over time. People will say, "Holy crap! I can't believe you're able to do that." They're marveled by it. I can't believe that someone was able to do that. We can't believe the amount of work that Joe Rogan can put out. We can't believe, the career of Kobe Bryant.
Yeah,
right?
just what I was thinking of. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I mean that's a great thing. I'm really interested in what your sort of philosophy behind what you do, but it's I think willpower is vastly underrated and underestimated in our society. I don't know why. A lot of times people will ask me, well, how do you achieve this, right? Which I'm sure you get the same thing. And the answer is willpower, right? The answer is you just want to do it and you focus and you fucking do it, And, but nobody sort of teaches you that in school, I don't think. I think it's almost a negative to have too much of that, right? In some crazy way, which I think is absolutely wrong.
I've seen you say that you didn't have a plan B at certain points in your career. I mean, I read that, but when I see that, it's admirable and I understand it, but I also wonder, what if someone doesn't manage to get there? You know what I mean? Like I get putting all your eggs into that basket and focusing on that, especially if it's something that you're interested in, right? And maybe if you're interested in enough, you don't perceive all of the stress as much as somebody else who's less interested, right? But what are your beliefs on not having a plan B towards that thing that is your purpose, your what you believe is your purpose or your interest?
Well, I can only speak from my own life, my own experience. And for me, wanting to be a writer, actually was I sort of started off. We can swear on this program.
Absolutely.
Started off fucking up big time. My life.
We have a penis pump right behind you. In case.
I'm gonna take that with me when I leave. But so I was just sort of trying to dig myself out of a hole, to write my way out of whatever bad situation I was in. So, but from time to time, I would try to have a plan B. I would try to sort of go straight, get a real job, like, there are all kinds of writing jobs that you can have, and, but what I found when I would do that was I was so depressed at the end of the day that I just couldn't stand it. So it wasn't like I said, oh, I don't have a plan B. It was like I tried to have many plan Bs, but it just didn't work. So there was no plan B for me. But I also think that the idea that somebody is going to make it, and hit a point and, oh, you've made it, right? You're over the top. I don't know if that's ever true for anybody. And I think a lot of people, as long as they're pursuing their plan A, even if they're not pursuing it at the Kobe Bryant level, even if they don't get to which is all of us, right? That's good. That's still okay, and people find a lot of happiness and a lot of fulfillment in being maybe not at the Kobe Bryant level, but at least doing their thing. I would bet that everybody that's in this room here right now is in some form of that place, that you're doing what you love, you're pursuing it, as best you can. And, what more can you do than that?
Yeah. Would you guys say that, like, because Mark, you were talking about interest level, you were talking about passion. For me, I mean, I felt like writing did call to me, but I never picked up the phone. And then when, I guess creating content kind of called to me, but it wasn't until I started doing photos, when that's happened to be when I started reading The War of Art. I felt like I needed to do it. Like you said, it was my job, but I felt like it literally like creating content, creating photos called to me. Would you guys say that's like along the same lines, or is that something even different than passion and interest level?
I would say that's exactly it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like it probably to you that writing sort of chose you in some weird way almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just kept hanging around. It kept circulating, and you don't know why.
Yeah, because I certainly wasn't good at it at the start and didn't have success at all for 20 years or something like that. And didn't even like it that much, you know?
You didn't like it.
But no, you know? I mean, well, of course, you know, it's hard work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Even for the best of people. I don't think anybody says, oh, I love to sit down and write. You know, it's like Gloria Steinem or somebody said, I don't like to write, I like to have written. So it's like the gym. You
like
know?
the
It's
results.
like, you know, there's tremendous resistance at the start. And at the end, when you're done, you go, oh, thank God I did that. I feel a million times better. That's exactly what I should have done. But, you know, the first, 10 minutes or getting into it, you know, is tough. But so, yeah, for years and years, I really didn't even like it. But yet I knew that I had to do it. So it was, you know, like taking photos, you know.
What do you think starts the war? What do you think kind of starts the internal battle? Like
Can you elaborate say that?
Yeah, maybe how has it worked out for you in the past where you started recognizing that there was a war going on, where there was conflict within you, and then you started to maybe surmount some small victories here and there?
Well, I certainly like for me, I'll get into some details here, even if this may be a little boring. You know, my first attempt at writing, I was working in an ad agency in New York, and I had a boss who was kind of a star, and he wrote a novel, and it was a hit, and he quit. And he became like a star. And I thought, well, shit, I'll do that too. Like, what could be so I sort of got into this world as a real dumbass. You know, it's like, why would you, I had no more business doing that than, trying to fly to the moon or something like that. So that, I found that I was getting my ass kicked by resistance for running away from it, running away from writing, doing a million other jobs, et cetera, for maybe 6 or 7 years. And before it finally dawned on me that there's a force out there, a negative force that's been beating me up all this time. That it isn't just me. I'm not just a loser and an idiot. There is an actual force, that radiates off for a writer off of the keypad. That radiates as a negative force trying to stop you from doing that thing. Same thing as a gym. I've read that David Goggins sometimes will stare at his running shoes for 20 minutes before he, finally says, okay, I'm ready to go. Yeah. So we all know that negative force. So for me, just finally giving a name to it, calling it resistance, like in the War of Art with a capital R, that was a tremendous breakthrough for me. Now, I still did not, quote unquote, succeed, quote unquote, for like another 30 years. But at least at that point, I was able to sit down and do the work, even though it was lousy, even though I wasn't getting anywhere. So giving it a name, that was a huge breakthrough for me. And just saying that the playing field is not level. It isn't easy to do anything, right? There's it isn't just that it's hard to lift weights. It's hard to even get into the gym to lift weights.
Some people believe that thinking and thought begins when there's conflict. Have you ever found it useful to just not think, or to think a lot less?
You just said that a few minutes before. I agree completely, Mark. To me, the only answer to any of this stuff is action. The more you think about it, the more you screw yourself up. And the more you think about it, the more paralyzed you become, right? So the only thing is to just do it. Just stop thinking and do it, whatever it is, That's my answer to everything is action.
I found it really useful when I was doing a bodybuilding show years ago, just to wake up really early and to do cardio first thing in the morning. And I would say that I'd be 15 minutes into the cardio where I'm finally awake and like almost conscious of the decision that I made. And then at that point I was like, yeah, this kind of sucks. But I was already in it.
Are you guys at all familiar with Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, he was like a great kind of guy that came over from India. He died like in 1954 or something like that. So he's not like one of these hip, but his thing was as soon as you open your eyes, he says, in bed, wake up in the morning, he says, get up. Get out of bed. Do not lie there thinking. He says, nothing good ever came from that. And I'm absolutely nothing good ever does come from that, right? No matter, I don't care what you're thinking. You're never, at least for me, I'm never thinking anything positive. The more I sit there and think, the more I'll go down a rabbit hole. So, he was said, just get up and start doing stuff. And I think it works.
It's pretty funny because like we have a sweatshirt that says "Think Less." And whenever I've seen comments of people like look at that, they're like, "You guys are dummies. Why would you think less? Why can't you you'd want to think more about things?" But exactly right. It's more about taking action. But the thing I'm kind of stuck on right now that I've been thinking about as you've been talking is you saying that you didn't like writing because I can like you've written so many books, right? You knew it was what you wanted to do. But I guess when I've thought of anything that I've wanted to do, there's aspects of it that may have actually been difficult to do, but there's part of me that really did still like the process of it, right? So when you say that you didn't like writing, what do you mean? I'm
just that it's so hard.
Yeah.
Just to write a single declarative sentence that you like, to write a paragraph that you like.
Okay.
It's really hard. And it's not to say that I hated every minute of it, because at the end of the day, if I had achieved something, if I'd got, half a page or something that I liked, then I could say, oh, okay, I felt like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But certainly over time, I did get to like it. Okay. As I started to get better and actually have an understanding of, like the gym, like when you learn how to do whatever you're trying to do, right? As you start to get a little better, you see some success, and you can actually look at your day's work and go, well, it wasn't a total waste. I did roll the P a little bit. So then, and now I do enjoy it once I'm into it.
Yeah.
But it's never not hard.
Gotcha.
It's never not hard. But to follow up on thinking, and I just was thinking of this as we were talking, even in an activity like writing that you think is a cerebral active, I don't think it's smart to think there either. Really? It's just sort of get into it and get into it, the story, whatever it is that you're doing, and don't analyze anything, Don't think. Don't get in your own way. So I think less is a great motto for any of us in any field.
One interesting thing though about the think less thing on the physical side of things, for example, when it comes to something like martial arts or jiu-jitsu, when you're able to get to a point of proficiency where you can now do things without thinking, that's when things get dangerous. That's when like you can actually your body just does what it's supposed to do. But when
dangerous in a good way.
In a good way. In a good way. Not dangerous in bad way. Dangerous in a good way, because your body's just now doing what it knows how to do, and you're just acting. You're acting. You're not thinking of your next move. You're just doing it. But when you're caught in the trap of like thinking of the next thing you're going to do or thinking about what your opponent's doing, you slow down. And that actually causes a level of friction that gives your opponent an opening to figure something out on you, because you've paused, you slow down, because you're starting to think,
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah.
Do you think some of this resistance is important, like in our decision-making skills? Do you think maybe it's not great for, trying to lose weight or have a regimen with the gym, or even starting something like writing, but maybe there's protective mechanisms that are in there of like, I don't know if I should do that because that kind of seems kind of dangerous, or, how do I pick or choose this? Do you think that maybe that kind of all comes together in some way?
Let's see if I understand what you're saying, Mike. You mean like that sometimes it makes sense not to go real hard, or not, or sometimes the voice of resistance is actually speaking the truth. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's smart sometimes to not go that hard.
Yes, sometimes I think that's true, but I would say I have a little saying that I tell myself, like when in doubt, it's resistance. When you hear that voice, it's resistance. You know, I mean, resistance to me is the voice of the status quo, which can make sense sometimes. Sometimes, you know, if there is a method that we're using and that works, maybe it's okay not to do that. But resistance always wants us to stay exactly where we are. Don't go beyond. And so if you want to go beyond, then you have to ignore that voice.
So early on, when resistance was beating you up and you weren't having too much success, how much, like, is it ever just that you're not good at this, like whatever particular thing, or is it just resistance just being really, really difficult?
You know, one of the things that I think is absolutely true, and I'm sure this is in almost all fields, is you can get better, right? You can start off lousy and not able to do something, but if you keep trying, right, you get better. So for me, when I was getting my butt kicked by resistance, basically what I was doing was I was completely running away from writing, not doing it at all. I had my typewriter, I never even touched it. And I was just doing other jobs and doing following other kind of imaginary plan Bs. Let me try this. Let me see if this would work. And so I was believing the voice in my head that's saying, you're no good, you're never going to get anywhere, this was a total mistake, you never should have tried this. And, you know, finally turning that corner and saying, okay, it is okay to try this, that was what made all the difference for me.
So it's a day after Christmas. Do family members sometimes want to turn the other way when they see you coming because they didn't act on?
I'm totally sloughing off now. You know, I'm eating terrible food, and you know. But I'll get back to it as soon as I get home and start to it. Yeah. Family members understand.
Are people sometimes concerned they maybe told you of like their hopes and dreams or something and they didn't act on it? They sometimes feel compelled to like dump a bunch of stuff on you probably.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. Which doesn't feel good to me. I feel bad. You know, I don't want to make people, you know, you're just self-reproach.
And you're expressing things that worked for you.
Yeah.
And hopefully
I don't say it unless somebody asks me, you know.
Right.
I'm not going around telling everybody anything.
When did you kind of realize that, unless I'm wrong about this, that you wouldn't retire? Because there's something in your book where you were talking to somebody and they said it's a habit. It's not a habit, it's a life. And then you also—
That was TR, actually.
That was TR.
Yeah.
There we go. And then you just mentioned that you said something like, I don't know, you mentioned some aspect of you wouldn't be stopping writing. You know what I mean? So a lot of people, when they do get into careers or they start something, there's an end date. There's a time, okay, I'm going to stop this at this time. But for you, it seems like you're not really going to stop writing or
No, they're going to take me out feet first, you know?
Right. Yeah. Was that always the intention, that you just keep doing it?
Well, for years, like I was saying, I was just trying to write my way out of a bad place, you know, to get over the hump. But once I did sort of get some traction and got going, I realized I'm not going to stop this. There's no way to stop this. Like, are you guys going to stop? You're not going to stop until your body completely breaks in half, you know? And even then you'll coach, right? You know? Yeah, there's no way to stop. To me, it's sort of like, it's like if you're swimming in the middle of the ocean, what are you going to do, right? You got to keep swimming.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on like writer's block?
There is no such thing, you know?
Because even just having writer's block, you could just write about that, right?
Again, it's sort of action. The answer to that is just to sit down and do it. You know, I'm knocking on wood as I say this, you know. I don't think it's willpower again. I think, you know, that you can always kind of jumpstart yourself. Maybe not in one day, but, you know, I think I mean, is there such a thing as powerlifter's block?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't hear it in other fields, right?
Yeah.
Is it just like the sum of other things? Like maybe you didn't sleep last night, so now you can't think straight.
It's resistance. It's people it's
literally
giving into resistance. Of course, resistance is there every day saying, don't do it, don't do it. You're not good enough. You're a loser. Let's go to the beach. But so the only answer to that is to do it.
Just power through.
Have you found that resistance in your life ends up being assistance when you're able to kind of cut through it?
Well, I don't know about being assistance, but I do think there's the opposite force to resistance. It's an equal and opposite force, and that is in what I call the Muse. It's the force of inspiration. It's one analogy that I use sometimes is like if you imagine a tree in the middle of a sunny meadow, and the tree is the dream that you have, whatever it is. As soon as that tree appears, a shadow appears, right? The shadow of the tree is there. So the shadow is resistance. So the bigger the dream, whatever it is, a book you want to write, a business you want to start, something like that, the more resistance you'll feel to it. But the dream always comes first. And so that dream is the opposite of resistance. It's assistance or whatever. That dream is living in you like a baby is in a pregnant woman, right? And we all have them, right? We're all constantly, I believe, having dreams and aspirations and ambitions and so on and so forth. So the trick, I think, if there is a trick, is to believe in that tree, believe in that dream, and dismiss the voice that says you can't live that dream. And remembering that it's just the shadow, and as soon as you take action, the shadow goes away.
I like to kind of personally lean into resistance a bit, just like we would in the gym.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I feel okay. I'm fine. Like that first set was good. That warm up felt good. You can go a little heavier. You can do a couple extra reps and kind of lean into the assistance. Now, sometimes it makes sense to say, well, you're just not feeling it today. And that could be fake.
That makes sense.
It could be resistance, but it could also just be you literally have been going at it for a couple of days in a row pretty hard.
Yeah.
I found that to be something beneficial. As I get through some of those things, I'll end up being a little stronger or end up with some of the results I was looking forward to.
Yeah, but also with resistance, just understanding that it exists is a superpower in my opinion, because it's like, okay, am I really unable to do X, Y, and Z, or is that resistance just being a little bitch to me today? Yeah. And it's like, I'm not going to answer that side of that call, right? So then I'm just going to understand it, recognize it, and then go ahead and keep following that dream.
I think that's exactly true. I mean, the biggest breakthrough for me was just realizing that there was a force.
Right, exactly.
Once you understand that, then you can get around it. Then you can dismiss it, then you can overpower it, then you can use whatever trick you use to, which I think are all forms of action, all forms of stop thinking and start doing whatever it is that you're going to do.
Yeah. Can you get into appeasing the muse? Because there's been a couple of instances recently.
Appeasing, did you say?
Yeah, appeasing the muse. Because lately, I've just been saying yes to a lot more things, even though whether I get sick or I feel banged up, I will still show up at jiu-jitsu, or I'll still show up to coach other people, and something good always ends up happening. So I'm putting myself where I really want to be, and I feel like I'm pleasing the muse a little bit here. So can you get into detail about explaining what that means for a lot of people that maybe haven't heard or read War of Art?
I certainly agree with that completely.
Yeah.
That I'll give it a kind of a long-winded thing about this.
Yeah.
The Muses were goddesses, Greek goddesses, 9 sisters who were the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne meaning memory. And the Muses' job was to inspire artists. And there was a muse of music, a muse of dance, a muse of whatever, 9 sisters. So that was just sort of the way the Greeks looked at things. They loved to kind of personify things, put a human face on things, and imagine the classic visualization of the muse would be somebody like Beethoven at the piano, and there would be a sort of a goddess-like figure whispering in his ear, So, but I'm absolutely a believer in that. that that there is a constant, almost like a trade wind of ideas coming into all of us, right? And we never go wrong when we listen to those, when we show up for the Muse. And I also feel I kind of anthropomorphize this thing too. I sort of think of the Muse a little bit like Santa Claus, that she's flying overhead and she knows if you're naughty or nice, right? And so she's looking down. Now, again, this applies to all forms of athletics, I think, too. You know, the goddess is looking down and she can look right into your soul and know, is this person showing up for the work today or not? And if you are showing up for the work today, she will give you a gift. You know, in terms of creative arts, it'll be an idea. You know, you're working on some scene and you can't quite get it, and then suddenly you got it, right? And an idea comes from nowhere, you know? Or in athletics, it's some sort of a, you know, you just make a little breakthrough in something, right? A different feeling or a different sense of your own power or something. And to me, that's coming not from us, but from some other dimension or our soul or our, you know. So if people ask me what my job is, I say I'm a servant of the Muse, and whatever she tells me to do, I do. And like in terms of books, you know, I'll write one book and then I'll wonder, well, what's the next one? And I sort of am silently asking the goddess, tell me what the next one is. And I'm looking at, as ideas come in, I'm going, is that the one? Is that the one? Is that the one? Is that the one? And then when I find it, then I sort of commit myself to that one. So that over a career, it's like Bruce Springsteen's albums, you know, album, right? He moves from one to another. But in all of those, he's kind of serving his goddess, right? And if you look at his career back and you go down one album after another, you see there's a real theme to it, you know, that nobody else could have done those. They're all very Springsteenian, right? And in a way, you know, we're talking about what your job is, Mark, you know, that's your job, I think, on this life, to connect to whatever that force is, that unseen force, that positive force, and give yourself over to it, you know, surrender to it. And the voice of resistance is constantly trying to talk you out of that. You know, it's always negative. It's always seductive. It's always trying to pull you away from that area. So it's a great skill, I think, to dismiss that voice. And nobody teaches you that in school, right? Nobody teaches you that there's a good voice and a bad voice, and listen to the good voice and dismiss the bad voice.
Teach it at home. Fuck school.
Exactly.
Do you think it's important to, I should say, it's important that people ask questions, because you're talking about asking the Muse. Like, you're not going to get answers. No one's going to open the door unless you're knocking. So you need to be pursuing these things. You find that the Muse is like more friendly to you if you're doing the right things?
Yes. But the Muse is also a little mysterious. You know, it doesn't send you a telegram that has it all spelled out, you know. So like, you have to ask the questions, you know. I'm just reading, you know who Rick Rubin is?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, he has a new book coming out very soon. It's called The Creative Act.
You have it?
Oh my God.
I had it. I mean, I've got it in a manuscript form, but I think it comes out like in a few days, you know, or a week or something like that. So Rick Rubin, for any of us who don't know, is a music producer who's done a million, sort of like the godfather of hip hop, right? He's worked with LL Cool J, the Beastie Boys, and, you know, on and on and on, right? Yeah. And basically, he facilitates their creativity, right? He has a studio called Shangri-La, and he'll bring, you know, a group in to produce an album. And maybe they've only got a couple of songs, or maybe they don't have any songs at all. And he'll just sort of he always walks around barefoot. He has a beard. He's like a kind of a crazy hippie looking guy. But he to me is sort of like a guy who's constantly saying, believe in the Muse, believe in the Muse. He's like a handmaiden for the Muse, or an assistant. And anyway, in his book, what I call the Muse, he calls source with a capital S, source, as if it was a radio station or something that was beaming positive frequencies to you, you know. And my definition is smaller than his. I see it as kind of a narrow thing, but he believes it's like everywhere, and everybody gets it, and it's constantly coming in, these ideas and signals from the cosmic radio station. So he's just such a believer and such a positive, you know, influence that I think these you know, the bands that come in to work with him who maybe are self-conscious or a little afraid or afraid of going to the next level or something, he's so positive that they just finally surrender to his positive energy, and then they do find the courage to take a chance. You know, this song that they thought might be a little too crazy, maybe we shouldn't really go for, let's go for it.
Yeah.
So, but I love his idea of source with a capital S as this constant, you know, stream of positive ideas coming through.
You know, one thing that I was really curious about, and it's kind of I find it kind of sad, but as I was going through your book, there's this idea, in Turning Pro, there's this idea of like losing friends as you go deeper and deeper into, you know, what you're doing. And we've talked about it on the show where you do want to surround yourself with, like, if you're trying to get better in terms of your health and your fitness, you want to maybe assess the people that are around you, because maybe they're feeding into the bad habits that are keeping you where you are, right? But even as you're going towards something else professionally, I was curious for you, do you still have a lot of your friends from like maybe childhood, your 20s, your 30s, or have you managed to keep any of those? Because what I've found is over the years, I've had friends that I've had for a long time, but many of those friends are somewhat gone at this point, you know, and it's unfortunate, but it seems as if it's almost necessary, you know? So I was curious for you, since you've probably known a lot of people through your life, what have you found with your friendships?
I still have a lot of my old friends, although they're in different parts of the country, so I don't really see them very often.
Yeah.
But I also have, as I've gone along, made new friends like TR. TR Goodman, my wonderful trainer and friend and guru, is like a classic thing of new friends that you make that are really positive toward you. And I do think that sometimes once you commit to an ambitious course, right, to going better for yourself, you do have to, there will be people that will try to bring you down. And the reason for that, and this is in The War of Art, as you know, Nsima, is that when you make the decision to go on a positive source for yourself, if they have a dream too.
Yeah.
And if they're not acting on it, they look at you acting on it, on your dream, and it's a reproach to them. And it's like, they go say to themselves, well, if Nsima can do it, why can't I do it, you know? And so the natural thing is to try to drag you down, you know, try to talk you out. And those people, unfortunately, you do have to, you know, distance yourself from them. Otherwise, you're never going to get anywhere.
You think people are tormented by their dreams?
Yes.
I had my oldest brother. He wanted to be great more than anything, and it basically killed him. He had a hard time, I guess you could say, of like being good and being consistent for a long time. Like maybe he didn't have a good understanding of like what it took to end up being great. And then there's not really a destination of being great. There's not a destination, as you mentioned earlier, of like making it either, right? So what are kind of your thoughts on that? Like, do you think it really can haunt people?
Definitely. I mean, I think that when we have, if we believe in source, and we have, and we believe in interests, and we have some sort of a calling that is pulling us as a dream, if we don't enact that, if we don't try to follow that dream, it doesn't just go away. It turns inward in a negative way. You know, it becomes, I can't think of the word right now, but it becomes malignant. Yeah. You know, and so dreams are definitely something that can kill us if we don't if we don't pursue them. Now, just to on the subject of making it for a second, there's as if you finally reach some point and then you're over the hump and you've made it. I don't think that's true at all. And I'm sure you guys believe this with me. It's like, there's a concept in yoga or in martial arts or in everything, the concept of a practice, right? Or a powerlifting practice, right? Where it's a thing you do every day, and you're going to do it till the day they carry out in a pine box, right? And it's not the goal, it's the practice, right? That each day, if you have a yoga practice, you go to the dojo, or whatever it is, and you enter that sacred space. You leave your problems outside. You leave the shitty half of yourself outside, and you commit to that thing. And each day you try to get a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And even if you can't get a little bit better, you're trying every day. And again, when I say sacred space, I'm bringing in the goddess again, that she's looking down on you and wondering and seeing into you how hard you're trying, how your commitment is, and blessing you as you, right? When you come out of the gym, you feel good,
Absolutely.
right? The bad vibes are gone, right? They're going to come back. They're going to be back again tomorrow morning. But for now, you've kind of exercised them and gotten rid of them. So I don't think it's about like making it. It's about a practice that you kind of keep doing your whole life. And it's always great to see like these, they're usually either Chinese or Japanese or Filipino, or somehow they're over there where they're more into like martial arts practices and things like that. And you see these guys that are 85 years old or 90 years old doing their thing, and it's just absolutely amazing, right?
Yes.
That what they can do.
Power Project family, how's it going? I want to talk to you guys about Within You Supplements, which is developed by Mark Bell. The cool thing about Within You is that it's not a crazy supplement line which has a crazy amount of unnecessary supplements. They stick to what is necessary. Whey protein, electrolytes, and the electrolytes are dope because they have amino acids and they have zinc. Then there's fasting gum. So we talk a lot about intermittent fasting on the podcast, and this fasting gum has apigenin, rutin, and caffeine, which can actually help you prolong a fast. It's really freaking cool. It was developed by Mark and Joel Green, who we've had on the podcast multiple times. So you guys got to check it out. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at markbellslingshot.com. And at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject10 to save 10% off your entire order. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
Do you think it's important to be able to identify yourself as a loser? I think that's like maybe really hard for somebody to do, but you've mentioned that about yourself, talking about yourself in the past.
I'm not sure I know exactly what you mean by identifying yourself as a loser. Could you be?
I think you
elaborate a little bit on that.
You
Mark?
mentioned being at kind of a low point, and you were at a low point, and going lower, lower, lower. And then somebody was asking you if you would go on this ranch with them and if you would be a cowboy with them. And you were just like, fuck, like, this is not me. Like, what am I doing type of thing. And I think that you picked yourself up by your bootstraps at that point. But you had some sort of realization or some sort of identification that was maybe not a loser, but that was not what you wanted to do. That was not in pursuit of your dreams.
Yeah, I certainly felt like I was on a path for a long time that was not my right path. So in that sense, I did think of myself as a loser, and I hate that word. It's not exactly the right word. It's just you're in the wilderness and you haven't quite found your right direction, your North Star, and you're kind of bumbling and stumbling.
Yeah, maybe you were lost for a period of time. That's normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for me, I was completely aware of it 24 hours a day, every second, and wanting not to be in that place, which is, again, it's kind of willpower, right? But for all of us, if that abyss is there every day, right? We can go down that hole every day, I think, just like somebody who has a drinking problem can always pick up a drink, right? The temptation is always there to sort of yield to that, that instant gratification or whatever it is. And, that's our dark side, right? That's the side that yields to resistance. But resistance never goes away. It's always there.
Yeah. Your mention of instant gratification makes me wonder. I don't know if you
use social media much or you use your phone, but there's so many things nowadays that kind of all fall into instant gratification, which sometimes makes it difficult for if an individual's wanting to start something that, like if you want to start learning how to be a writer, it's going to take a long time. If you want to start jujitsu, it's going to take a long time. And it seems as if because of a lot of things that give us instant gratification now, people are finding it much harder to pursue things that take a long time to become proficient at. And I was curious, since you've been doing so much for so long, have you found yourself getting caught in those traps at all of like, this isn't happening fast enough for me, I'm not getting this fast enough? Do you ever fall into those traps anymore, or are you just... I
don't, because it took me so long to even get to the starting line, So, but you're absolutely right. And this instant gratification stuff that's out there is all about money, right? It's all about them trying to suck you into, all these little businesses are trying to suck you into whatever it is. But if there ever was any sort of a guiding principle for what we're trying to do, it's when you see instant gratification, a temptation for that, go the absolute opposite way. There could be nothing worse than instant gratification,
Yeah.
And the idea of being able to defer gratification, to say, if we want to be a brain surgeon or a concert pianist, we say to ourselves, well, shit, that's going to take, I got 14 years of schooling, or I have, 20 years of sitting at the piano doing scales all day. That's reality.
Yes.
And anybody that's trying to convince you, or you ourselves are trying to convince ourselves that there's a shortcut, that's wrong. That's bad.
Yeah. I think delayed gratification is kind of where it's at.
Yes.
And then also it's going to be kind of fed to you like over a really long period of time. So in writing your book, The War of Art, which probably took you how many years to kind of get to that point where I know you wrote the book quickly, but how long did
it took, 10 years of thinking about it.
Right. 10 years and many other books that people maybe weren't nearly as popular. Right.
Yeah.
And then you come out with this kind of a banger of an idea, but the idea hits and it's not like you're celebrating all the time just because sales might be good or whatever, but you have people constantly telling you their interaction with the book, how it changed their life. And sometimes you might start to get used to that, but most of the time probably makes you feel amazing.
Actually, it really doesn't. This is sort of, it's a reality that...
it really doesn't make you feel amazing.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I really, it sounds kind of weird to say that. It is gratifying, but if you're, like we were talking about Bruce Springsteen's albums or books that I might write, you write one, the next one is your focus, and what you did before is in the past. So I'm always focused on whatever's right in front of me. And also in writing a book like The War of Art, I'm really writing it for myself, in all honesty. It's not like I said to myself, oh, I really want to help people. I just really want to understand that idea myself. And there's no better way to try to understand something than to have to write it out, So it's always for me, whatever the next thing is, whatever the next album is or whatever.
So when people come up to you and they tell you how excited they are about the book helped them, you say, hey, I'm already on to the next one.
It's true. I mean, I don't want to blow anything off. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy for everybody. But for me, it's, on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm curious. The War of Art is The War of Art is a book that I've read a few times now. But you, having written so many books, and I don't know what you were inspired by, but are there any books that you turn back to and have read multiple times that have kind of informed the way you think about certain things?
Yeah, there are. There are quite a few, but they're actually not in that area.
Oh, yeah.
They're in whole other areas. I have certain novels that I love, The Moviegoer by Walker Percy, or The Sun Also Rises, Ernest Hemingway, but also I love the ancient Greeks. I'm a big fan of those books, and they're like books that nobody would ever read. Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War, to me, is like a fantastic book. And But funny, they're not in that area. You know, it's not like, oh, I've read a bunch of other things there.
And what I'm wondering is for some of those books, maybe from the ancient Greeks, as you mentioned the Muse, you've mentioned a few things. And in your books, there seems to be somewhat of a supernatural element to a lot of this stuff. And I'm curious, does that element, I know it probably comes from so many things that it's hard to, come to one thing, but does it come from reading books from like the ancient Greeks and historical texts like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And other things. And, Eastern religions, Buddhism and stuff like that, and, Musashi Miyamoto and
the Book of Fire
martial
Rings.
arts kind of things, because they're all different disciplines, different cultures, different centuries, but it's all about the same sort of thing, which is what we're talking about here, right? A practice, a kind of a dedication, and that there are higher levels of reality that we're trying to aspire to and be true to. Definitely tons of books in that area.
Does writing help you a lot with, or does reading help you a lot with writing?
Yeah, definitely. If you're a musician, you want to listen to other musicians and what they did. Even if you're not really like studying it in the sense of, oh, this is a technique that they use. I think it just goes into you by osmosis or something, and definitely, it helps. It all helps.
Yeah. Does the Muse recognize that as you still kind of reaching for answers?
Yes, she approves of that.
Okay.
She does not mind you reading.
Okay. Well, because that's what I was really getting at was because like right now I want to get back on the mats and roll jujitsu, but I can't because my ribs and my back are kind of jacked up. So I've been reading and I've been watching a lot of stuff, but I'm like, hey, Muse, I'm still interested in this. I still want to get better, but I currently can't do the thing. So even though I'm still surrounding myself with it, she still appreciates that.
I think the Muse does appreciate
Okay,
that.
good.
Although I was reading something. You know who Elizabeth Gilbert is?
I do not.
She's a writer. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love.
I've heard of the book.
And Big Magic. And she's done she has a TED Talk that has 20 million views.
Geez.
She's a big believer in the Muse and in other sort of, and she tells a story about, see if I can get this right. She started on a project, a writing project, and somehow it stalled. And she went away and started doing a few other things. And when she went back to it, she found that the energy was sort of dead on this project. So she had happened to make friends with another woman writer whose name I forget, another really good writer. And she went and visited her for a few days wherever they lived. And somehow when they said goodbye, they kissed. And sure enough, this other woman writer came by her own way to that same idea that Elizabeth Gilbert had dropped. And she didn't even know that Elizabeth Gilbert had done it. She wrote a book that won a Pulitzer Prize or something like that. Wow. So you can take that for what it's worth. That maybe the Muse said, okay, you've left me too far long. I'm going to give up on you. I'm going to go to somebody else. But I actually don't believe that. I think when she comes with an idea or with a thought, it's for you only. And I think she understands if your back is tweaked and you can't get at it right now.
What do you have going on workout-wise? I've known your trainer for quite some time. What does TR have you working on?
Well, the way TR's kind of, actually TR's now focusing more on longevity than he is. I know like when you guys were really knew each other, he was training
a lot
pro
of
hockey players.
A lot of hockey, yeah.
And a lot of it was about getting ready for the season and getting in shape. And he had this thing called the circuit, which I know you know about, that was like, it was just really to get you in amazing shape, a professional shape to do a season, But now I think he's more with like regular people like me that, and longevity is a big thing now for TR. So, everything that he does is all kind of supersets. If you're doing one thing that's a pushing exercise, the next thing you're doing is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is about doing it fast. With TR, you never talk. There's no socializing.
Not a lot of rest.
There's no hanging around, shooting the shit, So, but I think he's really boiling it down to for somebody like me, just for the basic stuff that, and the other thing that 2 days a week that we do is just hip rotators or shoulder rotators, the little muscles in there that, right, when you injure yourself, that's where you injure yourself, in those little muscles. So it's for a lot of what he's doing now. But he does, he trains women, he does all kinds of stuff. And but it's basically a long-term fitness and that kind of thing, rather than professional athletes getting ready for the season.
You like it a lot? Like, what do you feel like it's doing?
do.
From a mental standpoint, you feel like it's doing some stuff for you there too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, TR is like a guru to me. And, it's hard to get out of bed early in the morning. There's a lot of resistance for that. But, like I say to him, I started working with him like 9 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was 70 at that point. I'm 79 now. And I was definitely in a downward, psychological thing of like, every day you're getting older, every day you're getting weaker, every day, you're getting closer to the grave, and TR totally turned that around for me, where it's all about, getting younger and that kind of concept, Yeah. So, he's really saved my life in more ways than one.
31 years old, eggs and liver. So what made you want to do that? When you mentioned that in Turning Pro, I read that, I was like, wait, what? He was eating eggs and liver?
This was when I was having failed, on my first book and blowing up my life, and spending like 6 or 7 years, in that sort of state of shame. And I finally kind of saved enough money to rent a house to where I was going to work for a year just to finish a book. Actually, I wound up spending 2 years there, and the amount of money that I saved to last for 2 years was $2,700. By the way, this was back in the day. But
$2,700 for 2 years.
But what I used to do is that every Monday I would go into the Bank of America, cash a check for $25, and I would live for a week on that. This was in the 70s. But in any event, I thought to myself, I was just kind of by myself in this little house. Didn't have any girlfriend, didn't have anything like that. Just to read and write was all I was going to do. And I said to myself, I'm going to power through this no matter. For my breakfast, I'm having liver and 5 eggs and because I need the power to do this.
Yeah.
And so that was the concept. Like bacon was too weak for me, or anything like that. And so
you able to follow it for a while?
Yeah, I did for the whole way. Yeah.
Damn.
He was on to this before any of us.
Here's the interesting thing about that for anybody. Like, so I did finish that book. Like you would think, okay, a triumph, right? Couldn't sell it. Couldn't sell the next one. It was another like 20-something years before I actually started to make any money, even though at that point I really had broken through. I mean, I really was a writer. I was a professional writer. I was working my ass off, I was focused, but success, quote unquote, was still a long, long way off after that. So I think that's one of the sort of lessons of this book that's the newest one. It's called Government Cheese. It's a kind of a memoir about that time in my life. And one of the things that I realized writing about that was, you think when you achieve some kind of breakthrough, physical or mental, oh, my life's going to change, but it doesn't. It's maybe another 10 years or 20 years before it manifests in a material sense. But you can feel that it has changed internally, right? I'm a different person. I've gone to another level, even if nobody knows it, and and I can't prove it by any material success or
external validation.
No external validation.
Once you start making some money, then you're like, yay, I get to be out of debt. So you get to be baseline.
For me, like the idea of making money is just so I can keep doing my work. That's all I care about,
Did you ever write with the intention of any of the books end up becoming movies, like The Legend of Bagger Vance?
No.
What was that like, that whole ordeal?
In what sense?
Just what was it like seeing your writing come to life on a movie theater?
In that case, I actually had been a screenwriter for about 10 years before that. So I'd had screenplays produced, And the big thing, in my opinion, is every time you see a movie that you wrote or had participated in, you hate it, and it's always like zero creative satisfaction. I don't know why. Maybe it's because in the movie business, the writer is like the bottom person on the totem pole. A lot of times the writer gets fired and replaced by other writers and another and another. And by the time a movie actually gets to the screen, it's completely different from what you thought it was. I remember, this is just a little silly story. I'd been working as a screenwriter for maybe 4 or 5 years and trying to get a handle on what it was. And my agent sold a script, somebody else's script, for $1 million, which was a lot of money in those days. And I said to him, "Can I see that? I got to see what $1 million script was." So I read this thing, and it was really good. It wasn't the movie Hard Rain, but it was that sort of a story of a storm that came to a town, and these criminals were going to loot the town, and there was only one sheriff. Blah blah. Anyway, it was really good. So, but the script was really good. Then I saw the movie. The movie, they had changed. The writer had been fired, replaced. There was not a single element, including the rain, was gone. So that's what happens in the movie business. Everything becomes totally changed, So I got fired immediately. As soon as they optioned the book, they immediately fired me as a screenwriter. And I would do that too if I were the director, because I know I'm rambling on here about the movie business, but once a property gets acquired to be made as a movie, it becomes the director's movie. In the case of Bagger Vance, it was Robert Redford, who was a great director, but it became his movie, not mine. So they wanted to get rid of me, and he brought in his own writer, and then he did his version of what it was.
Is there still a lot of people reading? Because it seems like a lot of people are just like kind of on the internet getting quick information.
It's somehow the book business, they say, is doing better than it ever has. Wow, I don't know if anybody actually reads. They might buy the books.
But they buy them, yeah.
I don't know, but I guess people still do read.
Like, oh yeah,
I don't know anybody that reads other than me.
There's the idea you mentioned of pulling the pin in one of your books, and I actually had a question, because we've been talking about this idea of like leaning into resistance. Like, you didn't have major success for, you said, over 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Now, we may all have somebody in our lives where they're doing something and they maybe have a dream, and let's say you want to encourage them, but there's something where maybe you just can't see that dream for them, and you want to encourage them, but at the same time, you don't want to encourage them to keep beating their head upon a wall that is not going to break, right? But for you, it was over 30 years. So I'm wondering, number one, there were probably people who were trying to discourage you from that, and if you did, you wouldn't have all this right now. But how can one navigate that? How, like, in terms of maybe
helping a friend?
Helping a friend. If you do truly don't think that your friend is going to be able to do that, who knows? They might, but. What do you do? Do you just keep encouraging this person?
I always encourage people.
You always encourage.
Never say anything negative.
Okay.
Never.
Okay.
Because when somebody says something negative to me, I know how harmful it can be.
Yeah.
And, who are we to say that somebody's going to succeed or not?
Sometimes that resistance is nice to pivot off of, though.
Yeah.
That motherfucker told me I was never going to do it.
I'm going to show you.
That shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you go and do it.
Yeah, like Tom Brady, hey, you're number 199 and we picked 6 other quarterbacks ahead of you,
Yep. Tom Brady also famously said, they asked him which Super Bowl was his favorite, and he said the next one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was kind of like you with the books.
Yeah.
Very similar.
So will he still be playing at 55? Well, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. You think writing is helping to keep you young?
Definitely. Definitely. I do think that, it's sort of a secret of artists, architects, musicians, painters, that, Picasso, whatever he was, 90, whatever he was, he's still doing great stuff. So I do think, again, it's that flow from source, Rick Rubin's source, that is really the life force. So as long as we're sort of, and in athletics too, right? As long as we're, going with that flow, the life energy, that's what, that keeps you young, or young as you can possibly be, given the fact that our bodies all break down at some point.
Yeah.
Are you actually writing, or do you do that at all, or do you just type on a computer usually?
Oh, I just type on a computer, yeah.
Earlier,
It's so much easier, when you can change things, yeah.
And it saves it and everything, yeah.
But for years I wrote on a typewriter, a manual typewriter back in the day, where if you wanted a copy, you have to have carbon paper. I don't know if you guys even know what that is.
It's been a while, but
You don't know what carbon paper
You need
is?
to rub
I
over
don't
top of it,
personally
right?
know.
Oh, wow, this is amazing. I'm really an old guy. If you want a copy, you'd have you put one sheet of paper,
Yeah.
then another, it's called carbon paper, and then another piece of paper on top of that.
Smash
And
it.
as the key from the typewriter hits the top page, the carbon paper makes the bottom page, also have the imprint. So you would take out, when you're finished with your page, you have 2 pages. And that's how you would copy things in back in the day.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned that you kind of talked about past lives. You just kind of glossed over it, but I was kind of curious. What is your belief when it does come to past lives?
Now again, I can't approve any of this sort of stuff.
It's fine.
But if you have 3 different kids, they're different from the day they pop out of the womb, right?
Yeah.
And they've already have a personality, right? And they even have issues, right? They might have health issues. They might have anger issues. They might have certain dreams that they have, right? Or interests, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to be interested in, and it's already there, right? So my question is, where does that come from? Why wouldn't they just be born? And it's even true with animals, puppies or kittens or something, right? They're all in a litter. Everyone is different right from the start, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I find, speaking of interests, a bunch of my books have been set, historical fiction have been set in ancient Greece.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why do I like that? Why not? Some people love to write about the Civil War.
Yeah.
Some people love to write about science fiction and invent, whatever. So I don't know. Where do those interests come from? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me if in some crazy way we've lived, in that time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Bagger Vance, the story of the book of Bagger Vance, which is not the movie, was really about previous lives. Mm-hmm. And it was about, the premise of it was that we don't go as individuals only through previous lives, but there are other people with us that are were with us back then, and were with us back here, and another one, and are with us now, and are all still in the same relation. Like one of the persons might be a mentor to the others, and I don't, that was just a story, but I believe it.
Okay.
Of course, we can never prove it, but
Yeah.
I've heard you talk before about how there's a lot of power in the depth of stuff, how deep we go into things. And again, being a big believer in, kind of following your interests, that there's going to be a lot of hours, a lot of time spent diving into things. We were just saying how we're not sure if people are reading or how deep they are getting into stuff. It's kind of my hope that people do find something that sparks them, that excites them, that gets them motivated, that they're interested enough in where they can get the depth that they need. But it can be very difficult in today's day and age with internet stuff and Instagram, TikTok, things that are very fast. There's only short little clips. And so we get a lot of surface level stuff and we don't really get the depth that we need a lot of times.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, in athletics and in everything else, nobody teaches you to work at a deep level of something. It's all these days like, instant gratification, be on the surface of things. But I can tell you that, and I'm sure this is true for music or for mathematics, hour 4 is different from hour 1. It's not the same in powerlifting, I'm sure, because you just can't go that long.
Right.
But I'm sure when Einstein was sitting down, hour 4, hour 5, hour 6, he got into it deeper than he did in hour 1. Mm-hmm. And I do think that's another, if there is a kind of a secret to anything, it's working deep, in going deep in athletics and anything else, I think.
That's what she said. I couldn't resist. I've noticed that, I've taken up running recently, and you're 100% right. Once you're in it for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, it's way different than previous. And then even if you extend out, it's like you might be in the zone, you might be in this weird zone that feels amazing an hour in. Another 30 minutes later, you might really be in a place where you're hurting.
Yes.
So it can shift and change.
Yeah.
But you learn a lot going through those depths.
Yeah.
Pretty neat.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you work on like meditation or anything like that?
I'm not a meditator, but I'm certainly a believer in it.
Okay.
I mean, for me, my story is that writing is my form of meditation.
That makes sense.
Because I do think that you have to go to another place. You have to go to you have to get rid of the ego, and surrender to whatever it is that you're working on, which again is what we're talking about, depth, right? The deeper as time goes by, hour 1, hour 2, hour 3, you surrender deeper and deeper.
Is a sober mind the easiest way for you to write, or have you ever found like having a drink or something like that helps?
No,
or
I'm not from that
mushrooms
school.
or anything like that.
No, I'm not from that school. I mean, I've experimented a little bit back in the day with that sort of stuff, but and it's interesting to go where it takes you, and to see what it is. But in terms of doing the actual work at a keyboard, I think sober is the way to be.
You've probably heard of the idea of flow and the flow type state or whatever. Do you find nowadays, is there anything any part of the ritual when you get yourself into writing that helps you get into that? Do you get into that every time you sit down and write, or?
That's a great question. No, I don't get into it every time. It's a rare thing.
It's a rare thing. Okay.
It's a rare thing. But one thing I'm definitely a believer in, and again, this comes back to action, is I believe like when you sit down at the keyboard, start writing minute 1, second 1. Don't think, just start. And that helps get into at least a little bit of a flow. But that, to me, flow is a kind of a rare, blessed occasion when it happens. But it does happen.
Yeah. What's that look like for you? Is it just jibber jabber?
You mean in the beginning?
Yeah.
When I start?
Yeah.
No, because I'm actually, I'm a believer like Hemingway always said, to stop at the end of the day when you know what's going to happen the next day. So if you're working on a scene, I sort of know, the cavalry is going to come over the hill and the fire, so I'll sort of start doing that, but I won't hold myself to, is this perfectly beautiful? I'll just get something down there and hope that as you get into the flow of it, that it'll get, some good things will come back. Because they always say, there's no such thing as writing, only rewriting. And there's a lot of truth to that too, that when you're writing a book, you can count on, for me, maybe 15 drafts. So if you do, the first draft is terrible, right? And even the 5th draft is still terrible, but the pages don't go away. So you can go back to them and work on it. So when I'm starting something and trying to get something going, I'm not holding myself to any standard of quality. Because then again, I think you start thinking, and you get paralyzed.
You think sometimes that a flow state can maybe come from like an adversity, almost the way that we've seen Michael Jordan. He had that one particular game where he's sick and everything.
Do you feel that way, Mark? I mean,
yeah, I've had days where I haven't felt good or something doesn't feel right, and then I go out and I just say, well, let me see what the hell happens. I think because my expectations aren't high. I also am a big believer that not having expectations is a blessing. So I try not to have hardly any expectations going into anything. I just want to go do something, and if I get it done, then that's cool. And if it ends up being awesome, then that's even better. But I usually wait until I'm in it. But yeah, I think.
So sometimes your best training days are the days that you thought, oh, I'm really fucked today. Right?
100%.
Why do you think that is? I found that true in my low level of training. But why do you think that's true?
I think it just it gets rid of the ceiling because you're not even aiming for it at that point. You're just trying to go. and you just start to go and you warm up, and maybe you're a little bit more cautious. Maybe you take your time a little bit more. Maybe there is a little bit more thinking going on in the beginning, but once you kind of get into it, you just start to go for it, and you're like, I think I'm feeling good. I mean, I've seen it.
It is true. Adversity does, I think, across the board.
Yeah.
You know, in athletics, in art, in anything. Yeah. It's crazy.
Pain seems to be I've always said that pain is a mentor, I believe. It teaches you.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, it teaches you a lot of lessons. And I think our problems do too. Our problems are there to teach us. They're there for us to learn from. They're trying to tell us something, but we can't quite figure it out. And we're like, man, how do I get rid of this problem? I can't figure it out. But the answers are probably there. You probably just need to keep kind of gravitating towards the right thing, which isn't always easy to do. And you do so more and more over time, and hopefully the problem dissipates.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you almost want to stop your writing when you know what the next, we'll say, page is going to look like, so that way you can just get started the next day.
Yeah.
But how do you know if you're quitting too early, and that's more resistance speaking to you instead of?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm a believer of quitting too early. I would rather, like Steinbeck had a thing where he would say, always let the well fill up overnight. Leave something in, And I do think I would rather, I know what he said. He said that to keep pushing at the end of the day, he was talking about writing, is the falsest kind of economy. Because he said, let the well fill up overnight. If you work too hard that one day, and you drain yourself too much, you're not going to have the juice the next day. So I'm a believer in stopping. I stop when I start making mistakes, when I start having typos.
Okay.
That's enough. And I think it's the same. I mean, you guys are the experts, but the same thing in the gym. If I feel like, I'm like this close to hurting myself, I better just stop.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. No, it's funny, like, especially with, like, for example, martial arts. Again, we keep coming back to jiu-jitsu with some of this stuff, but if you train and you don't give yourself, like, the time to let that stuff kind of cement, you're not going to be able to move forward because you're just too beat up all the time. Like, I found that without wanting this to happen, like, there may have been times that I've had to take 3 days off training for some reason, right? But because it's in the back of my head, I come back and I'm doing things that I've never done before because it's like my mind in the background was just kind of letting the things that I've worked on seal in, and then I can do something new.
That's great.
So
I think that's true.
It's cool.
Let
how
me
it
ask
works
you guys,
stuff.
what's your thinking about recovery
In general,
in training? I mean, do you believe in time off, or what's your whole theory behind that?
Your workouts are only as good as your recovery from them. So, your input has to be done a particular way. I think that if you just train smart, you don't have to think about the recovery as much. But we have a lot of tools. Like right now, I'm jamming my foot on something because I ran this morning, and I've been running for the last 126 days in a row. And we have a cold plunge, and we have 8 sleep mattress that helps with your sleep, that helps with the temperature and stuff like that. So, yeah, we think that recovery is huge. That's why we also adhere to a diet is very important. How you eat is a huge part of the game. How you sleep is obviously a huge part of it. So, yeah, we're big proponents of, we think it's important. You got to train hard, but the only way you're going to be able to really train hard and have good output is if the inputs are good.
Yeah, not destroying yourself. Like, it's funny, when you mentioned practice, I looked at Andrew and kind of laughed a little bit, because there's this guy we had on, Bill Maeda, who was on the podcast recently, and he doesn't call his workouts. He calls it his practice that he does each day. He'll do what his body can give him. It could be 15 minutes, could be 30 minutes, could be 50 minutes, but he'll do that practice for the day, go to sleep, do his next day's practice, because it's turned into just what he does. It's not that, like, oh, okay, I have to take a few days off because I beat myself up too much. It's literally just his daily practice, and that's what allows him to just do it every single day. Like Mark mentioned, like, when you're good enough at it, then you really don't end up needing days off, because you can figure out something. Even if it's a 10-minute thing, you can figure out something to do that can get you move you forward a little bit.
Yeah, we call that microdosing. So microdosing our workouts, just kind of get 10 minutes or 15 minutes here and there. But for me personally, like gone are the days of, beating myself up with a barbell. Like that's just not going to happen at this point anymore. So the recovery, it's gotten a lot better because my workouts have gotten a lot better. So yeah.
Kind of last question, because I know we got to let you go. Have you ever done this before where you just thought of the dumbest idea? Have you ever started with the dumbest and worst idea and then kind of gone from there?
That's a great question, Mark, because I really find that the ideas that I've had that were the best were the dumbest, or the ones that I thought to myself, like when I had the idea for the Legend of Bagger Rants, I thought, who is going to care about this? A golf story, a mystical golf story? What could be a dumber idea than that,
Yeah.
And all the way through writing it, I thought that, but I was just seized by it. And my second book, Gates of Fire, which was about the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, I thought to myself, who's going to care about this? This is a battle nobody can pronounce, nobody can spell, that happened 2,500 years ago. Nobody's heard of it. To people that Americans only care about Americans. This is not about Americans. So I thought, but I think the ideas that you think are dumb are the smartest ones, because it's like the Muse knows. You and I might not know, but she knows, And so again, I think it's that quality of having faith in something, even when self-doubt or other people are doubting you, is a huge thing, because like I say, the Muse knows even if we don't. So I think dumb ideas, I'm all in favor of them.
Andrew, take us on out of here.
Sure thing. And Mr. Pressfield, I know you said it wasn't the most gratifying thing, but your book, War of Art, is the first book I read about 10 years ago at this point. That's really when my photography...
He's on the next book.
I know. He's already on to a couple other ones, but that was really like the thing that really jump-started my photography career that led me to be here today. So I appreciate you so much for that.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Andrew.
sir.
That is gratifying to me.
All right, thank you,
when
sir.
we're in person and we could talk,
yes,
it's a whole other thing.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, thank you for checking out today's episode. So we kept saying the same term over and over, think less. Pick up your Think Less hoodie at powerproject.live, along with the new Power Sandal. You guys have been really crushing it with those, so thank you so much. Make sure you guys follow the podcast at MB Power Project on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. My Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter is at I am Andrew Z. And Nsima, where you at?
And Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. Mr. Pressfield, where can people find you?
People can find me on StephenPressfield.com. I'm on Instagram too.
Oh,
and if I can put in a plug.
Absolutely. Yes.
For the newest book that's just coming out in a few days. It isn't out now. It's called Government Cheese. It's a memoir. So it's sort of about the life that I was leading that we've been talking about today. So
Super
Government
cool.
Cheese coming December 30th.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you spending time with us, especially
Mark,
around the holidays.
Thank you for having.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Matt
Nsima,
Mark Melly Bell.
Andrew, great
Strength
to
is
see you.
never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.
All right. Good job, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.